Hello, class. Today we're starting a new chapter, and it's chapter 7. And I know you don't have your books there, but it is on polynomials. So we're going to start with 7.1 lesson today. It'll be a short lesson, and I've got a little itty-bitty worksheet for you to work on. But we're going to work on polynomials today. Let's get started. Okay, so polynomials is the chapter, and there's quite a few topics here we're going to kick off. This first one is a general, more or less an introduction to what a polynomial is. And we're going to first talk about degree, okay? And before we go into what a degree is, we want to kind of double back and talk a little bit about what the parts and pieces of a polynomial is. Okay, a part of the polynomial, the main part is a monomial. Okay, so a monomial is a number, a variable. It's a product of a number and one or more variables with whole number exponents. Okay, so a monomial is a special name. Okay, and it's got mono here. So monomials would include, here's some examples: -4, 1/2 y squared, 2.5 x squared y. Okay, so a monomial is a number. It's a variable, or it's a product. Okay, so you're multiplying here. You're multiplying a number in one or more variables with whole number exponents. And those are some key points there for you to remember going forward with monomials. Okay, so we've got a little chart here that these are monomials. Let's talk about what are not monomials. So for instance, this is x to the 1.5. This is not a monomial, all right, because the monomials must have whole number exponents. So this exponent is 1.5. It's a decimal, 1.5. It's not a whole number. It's got to be a whole number. And so this is not a monomial. The second one, -2/z. Monomials cannot have variables in the denominator. Okay, monomials cannot have variables in the denominator. So that's why that one is not a monomial. Okay. And the last one, z to the y power. Monomials cannot have variable exponents. Variable exponents. Okay, so here's some examples of monomials. These are examples of not monomials, and here are the reasons. So take a good solid look at this slide here before we go on to the first example. So there is a characteristic of a monomial, and it's called the degree. Okay, so when we talk about a degree of monomial, is the sum of the exponents of the variables in the monomial. Okay, so we've got a couple of this is quite easy to do, but what it is, it's kind of like a characteristic of the monomial. It's called the degree. Okay, and we use it to help rearrange the polynomials. Okay, so we use it to rearrange things. So let's take a look at example 1. It says find the degree of each monomial. Okay, so the exponent here is 2. Okay, so the exponent is 2. If the exponent is 2, the degree is 2. So the degree is 2. So the exponent is 2, the degree is 2. Letter B, -1/2 x y to the third. This is a monomial. And as you can see, you've got an exponent of 1. We don't put the 1 there, but it is an exponent of 1, x to the 1, y to the third. Okay, so if we're going to calculate the degree of this monomial, you're going to take this 1 and you're going to add it to 3 and that's 4. Okay, so this monomial here has a degree of 4. 3 plus 1. Letter C, -3. Okay, so you can, there's no variable here, but you can rewrite this with a variable. Let's just call it x. -3 x to the 0. Okay, -3 x to the 0. Okay, x to the 0 is 1. So -3 times x to the 0. Okay, so the degree of this, -3 degree, will be 0. Okay, so even though there's no variable there, you can rewrite it with 1, x to the 0 power, I should say. Okay, here we got some on your owns now. All right. 4 on your owns. Find the degree of the monomial. Let's go through this pretty quickly. So you got -3 x to the 4th. Okay, so you see that 4. That means the degree is 4. Okay, the degree is 4. Number 2, you have 7, c to the 3rd times d to the 2nd. Okay, so if you're calculating the degree here, you're going to take the exponent of the c, which is 3, and they're going to add it to the exponent of d, which is 2. That's 5. So your degree for number 2 is 5. 3 plus 2. Number 3, 5/3 times y. 5/3 times y. Now, if we're calculating the degree here, this would be y to the 1. So this would have a degree of 1. And number 4, -20.5, that would have 0 as a degree. Again, you could rewrite this as -20.5 x to the 0 property. Okay? All right, moving on. Let's talk about a polynomial. All right, so this is the biggest part of basically this chapter. A polynomial is a monomial, which we just talked about, or a sum of monomials. Each monomial is called a term of the polynomial. Okay, so here is a polynomial. So a polynomial with 2 terms is called a binomial. So here's the 2 terms, 5x and 2. Okay, so this is a pretty commonplace with algebra, is talking about binomials. So oftentimes you'll see these in parentheses, 5x plus 2 going forward. It's a binomial. Binomial is a polynomial with a special name that basically describes the polynomial because it has 2 terms, 5x and 2. Bicycle, okay, so easy to remember, binomial, okay? In this case here you have 3 terms, x squared, 5x, and 2. So corresponding with the same pattern, this is called a trinomial. Okay, tricycle, it's got 3 wheels, a special polynomial named trinomial. So again, these are polynomials, binomial, 5x plus 2, and this is trinomial, x squared plus 5x plus 2. Okay, just like we did on the previous slide, we can calculate the degree of a polynomial that is more than 1 term. Okay, this is quite an easy process, but you have to work through each term. So what it is that, so we're going to determine the degree of a polynomial. It's the greatest degree of its terms. Okay, so we take each term and we're going to find the degree of it. and it's the greatest degree of its term. So a polynomial in one variable is in standard form when the exponents of the terms decrease from left to right. Okay, so we're going to, two things here. We're going to calculate the degree of a polynomial, and then we're going to rearrange it into what is called standard form. Okay, and that's a process where we take the highest degree term and put that first. Okay, highest degree term first, and then the next highest, and then the last. Okay, if it was a trinomial, let's say. Okay, so once you do a couple of these, this slide will come quite easily to you. Let's go on to example 2. Okay, so what it is on this example 2, we have ourselves the polynomial in this first column. We have a column called standard form. Then we have a column called degree. And then we're going to talk about what is the type of polynomial. So we've got, basically, if I put lines down here, this is 4 columns. Polynomial, what's the standard form, what's the degree of the polynomial, and what's the type of polynomial. So that's what we're doing in this little slide, is we're determining the degree, we're classifying the polynomial, and we're rewriting it in standard form. Okay, so this one just has a single monomial. So in standard form, it's the same. So I'll write that down, -3z to the 4th. And we did like 8 examples, example 1. So what would be the degree of this polynomial? Would be the exponent of 4, so it would have a degree of 4. Okay, so the degree of this polynomial, -3z to the 4th, has a degree of 4. The polynomial has a special name, and we learned this in the first slide today. That's called a monomial. So I'll write that down. Monomial. Okay, letter B, a little tougher than the first one. All right, so first one basically, it has the polynomial, it's a monomial, it has a degree of 4, and standard form is just itself. All right, this one's a little bit tougher. We're going to start out by talking about standard form. All right, so if you look at the standard form of this, we're going to put this term first, okay? And now the reason why we're going to put this term first, and I'm going to switch colors here. I'm going to put this 5x squared first because that has the highest degree. So this has a degree of 2. This has a degree of 0. And this has a degree of 1. Okay, so when we write something in standard form, we have the highest degree term first, 5x to the 2nd. Okay, then it's going to go minus x because that has the next highest, and plus 4. Okay, so we're rewriting the polynomial in standard form, starting with the highest degree term first. Okay, this term has a degree of 2. This term has a degree of 1. Don't forget the negative, okay, it comes along with it. And then the 4 has a degree of 0. Okay, now what is the degree of this polynomial? The degree of this polynomial is going to be the highest degree. Okay, so we figured all these out in blue here. 4 is a degree of 0, 5x squared is a degree of 2, and x has a degree of 1. Okay, so what would be the highest degree? The degree would be 2. And lastly, the type of polynomial that this is, the type of polynomial has 3 terms. Okay, so this is called the trinomial. It's got 3 terms, and that type of polynomial would be called a trinomial. Now, letter C. 8q plus q to the 5th. Now in standard form, this q to the 5th has a degree of 5. Okay, so this q to the 5th will be first. Plus 8q. Okay, plus 8q. Now, why is q to the 5th first? Because it has a degree of 5, and this 8q has a degree of 1. Remember, it's the exponent. So we always put the highest degree term first, okay, when we're rewriting it in standard form. So then you look at the degree of this polynomial would be the highest degree, which would be 5. And then the type of polynomial would be another, well, in this case, binomial. Binomial has 2 terms, q to the 5th and 8q, binomial. So you can kind of see how this lesson's going. You're going to want to get takeaways here, rewriting polynomials into standard form, determining the degree of the polynomial, and then we would like to get familiar with the special names of different types of polynomials. So we're going to finish up this lesson with 3 on your owns on this next slide. And we're going to do the same exact thing as we did the previous slide with numbers 5, 6, and 7. So what we're going to do is first is we're going to rewrite this in standard form. So it says write the polynomial in standard form, identify the degree, and classify the polynomial by the number of terms. Basically, tell me, is it a monomial, is it a binomial, is it a trinomial? Okay, there's only those 3 options here. So this first one, in standard form, 4 minus 9z would be negative 9z plus 4. Now why? Because this has a degree of 1, negative 9z, because this has a little exponent of 1, and this has a degree of 0. Okay? So you always put in standard form, you always put the highest degree term first, negative 9z. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine what degree is this. Well, it's the highest degree, which is going to be 1. I'll circle that. And then I'm also going to call it a binomial. It has 2 terms. It's got negative 9z and 4, so it's called a binomial. Number 2. So these are last 2 of the lesson today, 6 and 7. Okay, so let's take a look at rearranging this. Let's think to yourself, which one of these terms is going to be first? Which one of these terms would be considered second? And which one would be, in standard form, written third? As you can see, this middle term has a degree of 3 because of the exponent 3. This first term has a degree of 2. And this last term here, negative 10t, has a degree of 1. So when writing in standard form, we're always going to put the highest degree term first, negative t to the 3rd. Okay, so negative t to the 3rd has a degree of 3, so we're going to highlight that first when we're rewriting in standard form. Then as you can see, we have plus t squared. Okay, plus t squared basically says 2 is the degree of this first term. So this t squared would be second, and then your last would be negative 10t. Okay, just don't forget your negatives. They come along with you when you're rewriting it in standard form. Now, let's talk about what is the degree of the polynomial. The degree is going to be the highest number. In this case, it's going to be 3. Has a degree of 3. It's the highest number. In this case would be 3. And your last question is, let's describe it. It has 3 terms. So this is called a trinomial. Trinomial. And the last one today, we're going to talk about this last one, 2.8x to the first. You know, we don't say it that way, we just said 2.8x plus x to the third. But we're looking at degrees here. This is going to have a degree of 1. This has a degree of 3. So we're going to rearrange this in standard form by putting the x to the third first. And we're going to add 2.8x. And you can see the degree is the highest number, which is 3 again. And this is a binomial. Binomial. So, and that's our last example on your own there. And I've got, hopefully this lesson was beneficial. The takeaways from this lesson. You're going to want to get familiar with the special names binomial and trinomial, and you're going to want to know how to rearrange your polynomials using standard form. So hopefully this was beneficial to you. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.